A young waitress in New York is serving coffee when a photo slips out of a billionaire's wallet. The moment she picks it up, her entire world shatters. With tears streaming down her face, she whispers, "Sir, that's my father's photo in your wallet." The billionaire nearly faints. What happens next will leave everyone in the diner stunned. Richard Maxwell's face drained of color, and for the first time, the billionaire who commanded boardrooms looked utterly lost. Emily clutched the photo to her chest, her mind racing. How could this stranger, this powerful man, carry something so deeply personal to her family? "Where did you get this?" she demanded, tears now streaming down her cheeks. Richard stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence, his fingers trembling as he tried to explain. The manager of the diner, worried about a scene, rushed over and scolded Emily for causing trouble. But Emily refused to step back. This was her father's memory, her life. The twist struck like lightning. Emily wasn't just serving coffee anymore. She was facing a man who somehow knew her family's deepest secret. The diner grew eerily quiet, forks left midair, coffee cooling untouched. Richard's eyes darted around as if the walls were closing in. He finally spoke, his voice heavy with emotion. "I knew Michael. I knew him very well." Emily's heart pounded, confusion mixing with anger. "How? He died years ago. We buried him. How could you know him?" Her question hung in the air like a blade, sharp and demanding. Richard leaned forward, his hands shaking, revealing that Michael wasn't just a friend he had once saved Richard's life during a construction accident in Chicago decades ago. Emily gasped, but suspicion still clouded her mind. Why would a billionaire carry her father's picture all these years? What truth was Richard hiding behind those trembling hands and tear-filled eyes? Emily's hands shook as she clutched the photo, her eyes never leaving Richard's face. "Tell me the truth," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why do you have my father's picture? Who are you to him?" The diner was so silent you could hear the tick of the wall clock. Richard swallowed hard, his lips trembling as if the weight of decades sat on his tongue. "Emily, your father wasn't just anyone to me. He was the man who saved my life." Emily blinked rapidly, confusion flashing across her tear-streaked face. "Saved your life? That's impossible. My dad was just a construction worker. He died years ago, long before I even graduated high school." Richard leaned forward, his voice lowering to almost a whisper, "And it was on that very construction site in Chicago. A steel beam nearly crushed me. I would have been buried alive if it weren't for your father, Michael Carter. He pulled me out with his bare hands, risking everything." The words struck Emily like thunder, her breath catching in her chest. "You knew my dad? Personally?" Her voice quivered, a mixture of awe and disbelief. Richard nodded, his eyes misty. "Not only did I know him, I owed him everything. He was the reason I could stand here today as a billionaire. Without Michael, there would be no Richard Maxwell." He paused, his voice cracking. "And I never got to repay him." Emily's throat tightened and she clenched the photo against her chest. "All these years? We struggled, Mom and I. We barely made rent. We thought Dad's sacrifice was forgotten by the world. And now you're telling me you carried his picture?" Her tone carried anger, grief, and hope all at once. Richard nodded solemnly. "Yes, every deal I made, every success I celebrated, I carried him with me. This photo reminded me of the man who gave me a second chance." Tears spilled freely down Emily's cheeks as she shook her head. "But why didn't you ever come to us? Why didn't you find us when we needed help the most?" The question cut like a knife. Richard's shoulders slumped, his confident aura crumbling. "I tried, Emily. I searched for years. But your family moved, changed addresses, disappeared from every record. By the time I traced your father's name again, it was too late. He was gone." His voice broke on the last word. Emily's sobs softened into silence, her heart torn between pain and gratitude. She looked at Richard through wet lashes. "So all this time you carried my dad's memory, while we carried his loss." Richard reached across the table, his voice thick with sincerity. "Emily, he wasn't just my hero. He was my brother. And finding you today, it feels like fate, like Michael himself brought me here." His hand trembled as it rested on the photo. Emily finally exhaled, her body trembling from the storm of emotions. She whispered, "Dad always said true kindness never dies." Maybe he was right. Richard's eyes filled with fresh tears as he replied, "He was right. And now it's my turn to honor him through you." The entire diner sat, frozen in awe, watching a waitress and a billionaire bound together not by money, but by the unbreakable legacy of a father's sacrifice. Emily's knees buckled as she sank into the booth across from Richard, her fingers trembling around the photograph like it was a lifeline. For years she had worked endless shifts, believing her father's sacrifice had been forgotten by the world. Now, sitting face to face with a billionaire whose life had been saved by her dad, she felt the weight of destiny pressing down on her. Richard reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. His voice, usually commanding in boardrooms, was soft and fragile. "Emily, your father was the reason I lived to see another day. Everything I built, every dream I chased, it's all because of him." Emily's tears spilled freely, her chest heaving with emotion she couldn't contain. "All my life I thought Dad's sacrifice died with him," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I thought no one remembered." Richard shook his head, squeezing her hand. "No, Emily, his legacy didn't end. It lived in me, in every step I took after that day. And today, it lives in you." The words wrapped around her heart like a warm embrace, melting years of silent pain. For the first time since losing her father, Emily felt his presence, alive, powerful, and eternal. The billionaire took a deep breath and pulled out a sealed envelope, sliding it gently toward her. "Your father gave me life. Now it's my turn to give you one." Emily hesitated, her eyes darting to the envelope before looking back at Richard in disbelief. "What is this?" she asked softly. Richard smiled through his tears. "A scholarship, a chance to study, to build a future without endless diner shifts, and more than that, a promise. I'll stand by you, the way your father once stood by me." Emily's lips quivered as she pressed the envelope against her chest, overwhelmed by gratitude and hope. The diner erupted into quiet applause, customers wiping their own tears after witnessing the extraordinary bond forming before their eyes. Some placed hands on their hearts, others whispered prayers under their breath. Emily glanced out the diner window, where the evening sun painted the sky in golden hues. It felt as if her father was watching, smiling from above, proud of the bridge built between past and present. She whispered softly, "Dad, you're still here, guiding me." Her words floated in the air, bringing goosebumps to everyone listening. Richard stood and placed a reassuring hand on Emily's shoulder, his voice steady yet emotional. "Michael Carter's story will never be forgotten. Not while I live, not while you live." Emily wiped her tears and stood tall, the photograph clutched firmly in her hand. She no longer felt like just a waitress, she felt like the daughter of a hero whose legacy now stretched beyond her imagination. In that moment, pain turned into power, grief into gratitude, and a simple diner became the stage for an unforgettable promise. The story of a father's sacrifice had transformed into a beacon of hope, proving that true kindness, once given, can ripple through generations and change lives forever.